I am very late to the party on this one, sorry about that, but I had to spend a few days just digesting this movie before I made a video talking about it. And normally I do no spoilers, but I will be talking about spoilers at the end of this video, and I'll let you know when to click off. So yeah, let's go. Spider-Man No Way Home. This is the third installment to the Tom Holland Home Spider-Man trilogy, and it's also our sixth time seeing Tom Holland play Spider-Man in the MCU. This film takes place directly after Far From Home, where Mysterio has revealed to the world that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And so, with no other choices, he seeks out Doctor Strange in order to cast a spell to reverse this. And in messing that spell up, the universe is merged together as we see old villains from across the Spider-Man movies breaching this dimension and causing chaos. And as I said previously, I wanted to spend a bit of time sitting on this, as I didn't want to have this whole review be tainted by the fact that I'm basically a massive Marvel fanboy. But even after sitting on this for a few days, I can confidently say this is one of the best MCU movies I've ever seen. It's a big statement, I know, but I really do mean it. This movie is just the whole package and some. The fan service, the storytelling, the character development, the action. I can't find a fault in any of it. Let's start off with Tom Holland himself. He's incredible in this. This is the most mature version of Spider-Man that we've seen to date, and it's also the most character growth that we've seen in Peter Parker. His relationship with the supporting cast feels earned, and you can feel the accumulation of all things that's happened before, which in a way leads me into Tom Holland and Zendaya, and their chemistry in this is really great. This is definitely the best of the pairing that we've seen in all three movies. Jacob Batalon as Ned has some really funny scenes as well, and the three of them in this trio feel just really great and genuine. Marisa Tomei also gets a really great chance to shine in here as well, and I'm glad they gave her more to do in this film. Being the spoiler-free part of this review, I'll only talk about what was revealed in the trailers. To be honest, if you haven't seen the trailers, don't even bother watching this and just go see the movie, really. But as for the trailers, we know we have the return of Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Electro, Sandman, and the Lizard Man, as well as the return as all the OG actors that played them in Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man. And that in itself is amazing. Genuinely, I felt like I was dreaming watching them all on screen again. But part of me was worried that they would just play small minor acts or just cameos in the grander story. But I'm happy to say that they are a really key integral part to this film. Being so many of them, there is unfortunately some villains that get more screen time and development than others, with the two being shunned the most, Sandman and Lizard Man. I've seen some reviews where they say they're basically not it at all, and I have to still disagree with that though. And I think one of the issues is that with The Amazing Spider-Man, Lizard Man is a fairly shallow character. He didn't share that much importance with the characters or the story he was in. The first Amazing Spider-Man was more about Peter Parker's growth and becoming of Spider-Man and his relationship with Gwen. So there wasn't that much of an opportunity to develop him more in this movie without wasting too much time to do so. To give him any more growth, you would have to give him a lot of screen time to get anywhere. And Sandman, on the opposite, is kind of the other way around, where he had his entire character arc within Spider-Man 3. He'd already been forgiven by Spider-Man and learnt not to waste his redemption on a life of crime and had already escaped. So there was nothing you really needed to add to him, so they didn't follow up much on him in this film either. But they're still both in it, and they both still get their moments, so I don't think there's anything to complain about. Moving on to the other three villains, Jamie Foxx really gets a great shot of redemption here, playing Electro, compared to his poor reception in Amazing Spider-Man 2. His redesign looks incredible, and I'm honestly quite surprised with the extra flavour that they gave this character. It's such an improvement on the washboard personality that we had previously, and Jon Watts, who honestly should get so much praise for doing this, gives new opportunities to either show off these characters in different ways or to add something to them that we've not seen since we last saw them 10 or so years ago. And this really applies to Doc Ock really well. This isn't the best fighting we've seen from Doc Ock, that's still in Spider-Man 2, but this is more like having a Doc Ock sequel almost. You get some really great moments out of him that you feel like you might have got if he was ever in another Spider-Man movie in that old universe. But I mean, to be honest, Willem Dafoe is the show stealer in this film, and good God, they remind you of why he is the OG villain of Spider-Man. And we get to see him perform in some very different ways, partially because of the evolution of Hollywood and CGI. So this movie has fan service? Sure. Every moment of this film feels like fan service, but it's done correctly. It's integral to the story and it's not thrown in some cheap nostalgic moment just to get the audience thinking that it's a good movie when it's not. And then because you're won over by these elements previously, when they start throwing in those recognisable one-liners or jokes, instead of thinking it's tedious or silly, you then start to enjoy it for what it is, and it just elevates the good time you're already having. Doctor Strange also plays a really balanced role in here as well. He's not in it just for a scene, and he doesn't take over the movie either. This is a Spider-Man movie through and through, and Doctor Strange serves as a good supporting character to move the plot forward. And forewarning, it is quite a long movie. It's 2.5 hours long, and you're never not going to feel the effects of a 2.5 hour movie. But despite that, I think it's a really well-paced movie. You get into the meat and bones of the story by no later than half an hour into the film. New revelations are given to us in the correct amount of doses throughout the movie, and it's got a great mixture of humour, action, and drama. For a couple of times, it does follow moments which I've complained about the MCU before, where it has a tense, dramatic scene, and MCU movies just cannot help but throw jokes in there to ruin that tension. Thankfully, it doesn't happen so much in this film. In fact, this is a really heavy movie. You get those parts, and it's coupled with some amazing action scenes which just make you want to pump your fists into the air. You get to see why Peter Parker is the superhero, not Spider-Man. And if you've seen the trailer, you've probably seen the bits of Doctor Strange in the Grand Canyon area fighting off against Spider-Man. It's one of the more creative fight scenes I've seen in the MCU. I'm going to end the spoiler-free part of this review now, but bottom line is, if you're an MCU fan, go watch it. It's such a solid film. But if you really want to get the full experience of watching this movie, then you really should watch all the previous Spider-Man films before this. Not just the Tom Holland ones. Because amazingly enough, No Way Home adds to those previous movies as well. So yeah, go watch it. Like this video if you found it helpful, and then come back to watch the rest afterwards. And as for the rest of us, this is the spoiler part of the discussion, and this is your last warning. So in 3, 2, 1, mother of God, we finally got the Spidey Boys back. If you've seen the trailers, you probably assumed something like that was going to happen anyway, but oh man, I cannot tell you when I was watching this in cinemas. When you see Spider-Man coming through that first portal, I just got goosebumps. It's actually incredible, considering you've got Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield all playing the same character essentially. They're so different and they look so recognisable. But yeah, I could definitely tell it wasn't the MCU Spider-Man, and as he got closer, there was just no doubt in my mind, and I was so happy. Watching that scene where they're both revealed, honestly, I was just tearing up from childhood joy, and I was just trying to not break down in tears and see them discussing important plot factors as well as making some really great jokes. I could have just watched 2 hours of all three Spider-Men gushing over each other and being best friends. That shit was heartwarming, man. I've seen a lot of complaints about how it was so easy for Ned to all of a sudden use Doctor Strange magic. And I do agree, however, I still think they made the right choice to not go too in-depth about that. The movie's really long as it is, and I think to properly explain that to a point where audience members would have been happy, you would have had to take up a good chunk of the runtime. The focus of the story isn't really about that, and it's actually about Tom Holland's origin story for Spider-Man, apparently. But man, they just don't shoehorn them in here either. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield crush it. Likewise to what I was saying earlier, I was worried that they were just going to be cameos in the later part of the movie and not really that important. I just love how Jon Watts brought them here to be the supporting team that allows Peter Parker to overcome his sadness and transition from Spider-Boy to Spider-Man. I do love the idea that Tobey and Andrew's Spider-Men were older versions of what we saw from them in the original movies, whereas the villains were more snapshotted from the movies that we've all seen. And whilst you kind of have to look past that confusing aspect of it being multiple universes but also multiple timelines within the same universes, it does end up serving the story really well. Seeing Andrew's Peter Parker keep that charm that we recognised before whilst living a life in solitude and regret from not being able to save Gwen just hits so much. And honestly, my favourite scene in this film is the much needed redemption he got when he saved MJ falling. Andrew Garfield's acting in that scene was exactly what we needed. And then you have Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man acting as the father or the big brother character here. giving advice to both Peter Parkers. After the not so great endings and reception of Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, this film actually manages to paint those in a better light, knowing that the next step for every character is given in this film. It's almost like watching Samwise Gamgee get married at the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, a true send-off to each character. Doc Ock finally becoming good and catching up with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man at the end of this film just felt so satisfying to see. I'm amazed how this single movie can act as a finale for all three Spider-Man universes. It gave each villain a scene with their respected Peter Parkers, minus Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe. However, I'll look past that because the Green Goblin was just so prevalent and amazing throughout this film. So far I've only seen this film once, but you can bet I'm going to go watch this again. I didn't even talk about how Daredevil's in this film. I can't believe it. It goes to show the quality of this movie when the reveal of Matt Murdock finally being in the MCU isn't that high up on my list. But yeah, that's No Way Home. Let me know if you guys have seen it already. I hope you're at the stage, if you're at the end of this video, that you have seen it, otherwise I've just ruined a lot of it for you. But if you've seen it, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you liked this video, like and subscribe, all that, it really helps out. And as always, stay tuned for more reviews of movies, anime, and video games. Until next time guys, take care. Bye bye.